The story of the ingenious fisherman. In a coastal village nestled between the dense, emerald forest and the vast, shimmering ocean, there lived a fisherman named Ebrahim. Known to all in the village for his wisdom and ingenuity, Ebrahim had a reputation for solving problems that seemed impossible to others. He was not a man of wealth, but his sharp mind was his greatest asset, and he was respected for it. The village itself had thrived for generations, thanks to the bounty of the sea. But recently, something strange had begun to happen. The fish, once plentiful, had mysteriously vanished from the waters. Day after day, the villagers cast their nets into the ocean, only to pull them back empty. The boats that once brought life to the village returned with nothing but disappointment. The village elders grew worried, and murmurs of famine filled the air. Ebrahim watched quietly as his fellow fishermen grew more desperate. He knew something had to be done. One evening, after a particularly fruitless day at sea, he decided to take a different approach. He gathered the villagers around the fire and spoke. "Friends," he began, "we have been fishing these waters for generations, and we have come to rely on them. But the sea is a mystery, and we must not assume that what we know is all there is to know. Perhaps the fish are still there, but they are not where we think they are." The crowd was silent, listening intently. One of the older men scoffed. "The fish have fled, Ebrahim. There is no point in trying." Ebrahim smiled. "Perhaps. But we have not considered the possibility that they have simply moved to deeper waters or that something has changed in the currents. We need to think differently." The villagers were hesitant, but they trusted Ebrahim's intelligence. The next morning, he set out on his boat, but instead of casting his nets in the usual spots, he steered his vessel far from the village, where the waters grew dark and deep. There, he dropped his net and waited. Hours passed, and Ebrahim remained patient. As the sun began to dip below the horizon, his net suddenly grew heavy. He pulled with all his might, and to his astonishment, his net was teeming with fish more than he had ever caught before. When Ebrahim returned to the village, the people were stunned. Word of his catch spread quickly, and soon the whole village gathered at the shore. They marveled at the sight of the boat overflowing with fish. Ebrahim, still calm, explained, "The fish have moved deeper, but they are not gone. We must change our ways to find them." The villagers took his advice to heart. They began to explore new fishing grounds, relying on Ebrahim's insights. In time, the village flourished once more. The crisis that had threatened their survival passed, and the people thrived. But Ebrahim's wisdom did not stop at fishing. He believed that intelligence was not merely about finding solutions to problems, but about understanding the world in new ways. He taught the villagers how to read the weather patterns, to observe the birds and the clouds, and to understand the rhythms of nature. Soon, the village became known not only for its abundant fish but for the knowledge and wisdom of its people. One day, a traveler arrived at the village, hearing of its reputation for intelligence. He approached Ebrahim and said, "I have traveled far and wide, and I have never heard of a village that prospers so greatly from the wisdom of its people. What is your secret?" Ebrahim smiled humbly and replied, "The secret is simple. We do not rely on what we know. We rely on what we have yet to discover." The traveler nodded, understanding that true intelligence was not a static thing but a dynamic, ever-evolving pursuit of knowledge and understanding. And so, the village continued to thrive, not because they had all the answers, but because they were always willing to ask new questions. In time, Ebrahim grew old, but his legacy lived on. The village became a place where curiosity and intelligence flourished, where children were taught to think critically and creatively. They learned that intelligence was not just about solving problems but about seeing the world through a lens of possibility, always seeking new horizons and deeper understanding. Ebrahim's story spread far beyond the village, and people from other towns and villages came to learn from the fisherman who had taught his people to see the world differently. And though Ebrahim himself eventually passed into legend, the wisdom he shared continued to guide the villagers for generations to come. Thus, the story of Ebrahim, the ingenious fisherman, became a symbol of the power of intelligence, not as something to be possessed, but as something to be pursued, a never-ending journey of discovery, adaptation, and understanding.